Text structure refers to how written text is organised. To be able to understand written text, that is, to understand the content of the text they're engaging with, students must be able to recognise relationships between the elements that make up the text. Understanding the different elements of texts and how those elements fit together is important for comprehension. The following is an example text structure lesson using a narrative text. Watch as the story elements and icons are introduced to the student and then placed in the context of a story during shared reading. Before we read our story today called Funky Chicken Chooks in Space, we're going to talk about the parts of a story that we might need to know that help us understand how a story is put together, okay? Now, there's lots of different parts in a story, and a story usually goes in a particular order. Now, in a story, there's always going to be a character.
Yes.
Now, a character is a person or an animal or a thing that the story is about. Now,
Funky Chicken.
in this story, our character is Funky Chicken. Now, when we talk about our story will have lots of characters. Now, this icon helps us remember who's in the story. It helps us remember the character. Good job. Now, characters are the most important part of our story. Now, in our story, we might actually have more than one character. We might have lots of characters, and they might be lots of different things. So a character might be a person or an animal. You might have people and animals as characters in your story. They're all really important parts of our story and help us remember when we want to retell what the story is about. In our story, we also have settings. Now, settings are where the story happens.
Yes.
Yeah? So our characters are in the story and they go to places in that story. Those places that they go to or where the story happens, those are called the settings. Yeah? Now, settings are really important because they tell us a lot about where the story is happening. In our story, there were a few settings, weren't there? Now, the first setting, or the place where the story happened, was the farm that was in Humpty Doo. Now, we're going to play a game. I'm going to shuffle these. Oh, don't peek. And I'm going to show you one of the icons, and you have to tell me what it is. Ready? This one.
The character.
Good job. You can keep that one. Oh. What about this one?
The problem.
What's the other word we use for it?
Complication.
Complication. Good job. And the final one, are you ready, Spaghetti?
The setting.
The setting. Good job. And what was the setting? It means the
Start. Or
place.
the place.
The place that the story happens. Good job. Clearly and explicitly teach the story elements and the corresponding icon required to understand the narrative text. The speed that you introduce new story elements will depend on how the student is responding and the aim of the lesson. Revising the story elements and matching icons can help reinforce new learning. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to read this story again, and when we hear the character, we're going to put the icon in our book. When we hear the setting, we're going to put that icon in the book. And when we hear the complication, we're going to put it in.
Complication in the book.
Beautiful. All right, let's do it. So, Funky Chicken Chooks in Space. After your student has identified elements in the story, you may wish to practice retelling parts or all of the story together. This may occur in this lesson, as well as in follow-up sessions later in the week. In order to help your student to produce an accurate retell of the story, you may have the book and icons available at first as a guide. As they become more confident and they retell more detailed, consider removing the storybook but keep the icons on the table. If the student is confident retelling the story with the icons present, try removing the icons and encourage the student to retell the story.
Funky Chicken thinks that he's made to go to space, but he finds out that family's not in space.
Okay.
And
Okay, keep telling me, yes.
He thinks that space is not that dangerous, but it actually is.
When the student retells the story, you want to provide the right amount of prompting and supports to encourage success. If the task is too difficult at the beginning, you may begin by taking it in turns and each retelling different parts of the story. Follow your student's lead and tune into the cues that will help you decide how much prompting is required.